You don't approve of how I live my life.
Then you are free to walk out that door, my fiancée told me, seconds before leaving for a casual camping trip with her male best friend. So, I did exactly what she suggested.
Eat.
I removed my name from the lease, cleared out every piece of furniture I had bought, and pulled the plug on our upcoming wedding. 3 days later, she returned to a silent, hollowed out apartment and a simple note on the kitchen counter. When she read it, she didn't just cry. She called me, screaming at the top of her lungs. Hey, Reddit. My name is Dean M29, and I work as a high voltage lineman.
Fakings.
I clear about 70 grand a year, have solid benefits, and am pretty grounded. I met Chelsea 5 years ago at a community barbecue. She was an energetic, vibrant art student, always glued to her camera.
Capturing the world around her.
I was the guy quietly flipping burgers, making sure no one got food poisoning. As the sun began to set, she wandered over to my grill. She teased me about my setup,
Phew.
asking if I was always this intense about not overcooking the meat. We talked until 2 a.m. on the back porch, and for the first time I felt like I'd met someone truly interesting. We were from different worlds, but it worked.
Phew, so I thought.
We moved in together, it's 18 months later, into a two-room apartment. Rent was $1,350 a month, and the plan was to split it down the middle. In reality,
Thing.
I covered about 950 of it because her freelance photography gigs were erratic. Shed, book a wedding shoot 1 month, and then nothing for the next 3. Shed pick up retail shifts just to fill the gaps,
Fakes.
but I was essentially bankrolling our existence. I didn't mind back then. I figured we were building a future together. I proposed 8 months ago at an overlook she loved.
The kind of spot Shed always wanted for a photography portfolio.
I got down on one knee with a ring it'd spent 4 months worth of overtime savings on. She cried. She said yes,
Ija.
and she immediately pulled out her phone to take selfies with the ring. She had it posted on social media before we even reached the car. We set the date for 10 months out. Her parents offered to cover half the costs, about 14,
Deals.
0, and I was handling the other half. That was right around the time Liam started hovering. Liam had been lurking in the background of her life since I'd known her, a college friend from her sophomore year.
Fashion.
One of those guys who was perpetually single but always surrounded by women. He worked in promotions for breweries and event companies, had the perfect hair, and always looked like he just stepped out of a catalog.
Fake. Effortless charm that some people find irresistible.
He'd kept his distance while we were dating, but the engagement changed the dynamic. Suddenly, he was everywhere. Every post Chelsea made.
Fiend.
Liam was the first in the comments with inside jokes I wasn't privy to. Her phone would buzz during dinner, and it was always a meme from him. Not. There were constant invitations to events.
Ishin. Always with a.
You should bring Dean tacked on at the end. The problem was I was never actually welcome. These were events on my work nights, at venues 2 hours away,
He'd claim.
were last minute, and only for one person. The first time I properly met him was at an engagement party. One of Chelsea's friends threw. Liam showed up late, made a dramatic entrance.
Felsie for just a second too long.
When she introduced me as her fiancé, he gave me this smug, pitying smile, and a handshake that felt like a test of dominance. So,
Guy who finally got Chelsea to settle down, he asked.
his eyes never leaving hers. Impressive. I played it cool. Just got lucky, I replied. Sure did, he said, staring at her, completely ignoring me.
It only got worse from there.
Chelsea started going out more, attending late dinners that turned into Latin night concerts. I'd come home to an empty, cold apartment, only to find her stumbling in at 2 in the morning.
They smelling like bonfire smoke and cheap perfume.
I finally tried to address it a month before the camping incident. We were reviewing catering options for the wedding when her phone chimed again. She was grinning at the screen.
That, I asked.
Liam, she replied without looking up. He's planning a camping trip. 3 days up at Mirror Lake. He wants to know if I'm in. When? I asked. My stomach tightening. Next weekend. Yeah. Wed leave Friday.
Ewan.
Chelsea. We have the final venue walkthrough that Sunday. We scheduled that 2 months ago. She waved it off casually. We can reschedule, Dean. Everyone is going, and I haven't done a real getaway in ages.
Then
I paused, setting the folder down. I don't like how much time you're spending with him, I said. Her expression shifted from relaxed to defensive in a heartbeat. Are you serious right now? Liam has been my friend since college.
bet to tell me who I can hang out with.
I'm not telling you who to hang out with. I'm just saying, it's strange how Hez suddenly everywhere. She laughed, a sharp, patronizing sound. You're jealous. That's what this is.
He's just a friend, Dean.
Do you know how incredibly insecure that makes you sound? It was a classic move. Flip the narrative, turn the tables, and make me the source of the problem. I dropped it, but the camping trip loomed,
Fiendsheim.
and my gut screamed that something was fundamentally wrong. The week before the trip, I came home early from work because my supervisor gave us a half day after WED, finally finished a massive week-long project.
Thought I'd surprise Chelsea.
Take her to that Thai place she loved, and try to have a real night together. I walked into the living room and found her on the couch, FaceTiming Liam. She was laughing,
Femi.
glowing in a way I hadn't seen in months. When she saw me, her face flickered with a shadow of panic before she recovered. Dean's home, she told the phone. I've got to go. See you Friday. She hung up immediately.
Was about.
I asked, keeping my voice steady. Just camping stuff, she said quickly. Liam's bringing the tents. Yeah, I definitely wasn't overreacting. The breaking point arrived on a Thursday night,
Bing.
20 hours before she was set to leave for her wilderness adventure. I got home from a brutal 10-hour shift. WED had a major grid failure due to a transmission line collapse,
Feed you.
and I'd spent the entire day coordinating crews and trying to keep the utility company from getting destroyed on social media. I was exhausted, covered in grit, and just wanted a hot shower.
Feed.
I walked into our bedroom to find Chelsea packing. There was serious, expensive camping gear spread across the bed like she was preparing for an expedition to Everest. A sleeping bag, a portable chair, those high-end,
Fameshins.
moisture-wicking shirts Shed bought last month and never worn. I counted 3 different swimsuits laid out for the lake. And then I saw at the perfume I'd bought her for Christmas.
Figted.
The one she claimed she was saving for special occasions. The whole setup screamed a romantic getaway, not a casual trip with a buddy. Packing heavy for just 3 days? I asked from the doorway, my work boots still on.
He didn't look up.
Carefully folding a silk shirt. Want to be prepared, she murmured. The weather is supposed to be perfect. Liam said, the lake is absolutely amazing this time of year. I watched her for a long, silent minute.
You don't like my lifestyle.
Dean, then just leave, she said, her voice dripping with cold indifference. She didn't even look at me. She just zipped the bag, grabbed her phone, and turned toward the bathroom.
Something inside me.
Finally snapped. The jealousy, the gaslighting, the feeling of being a roommate who pays the rent while she spends her nights with Liam all evaporated, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. You're right, I said,
Vind.
my voice eerily calm. I don't like it. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I turned around and walked out of the bedroom. I called a buddy of mine with a flatbed truck, and by the time she finished her shower,
My stuff was
already on its way out. I took the couch, the TV, the sound system, and every piece of furniture it bought. I pulled my name off the lease at the management office the next morning.
Then I canceled the wedding venue and the deposit.
I even took the engagement ring back from the jewelry box. When she came home that Sunday from her camping trip, the apartment was bare. There was nothing left but a small
That note on the kitchen counter.
You said if I didn't like your lifestyle, I should leave. I agreed with you. Enjoy the silence, Chelsea. She called me about 20 minutes later, and her screaming was so high-pitched, I had to pull the phone away from my ear. Where is the couch? Where is the TV? What did you do, Dean? You left me with an empty apartment. I took a deep breath,
Phasing.
looking out the window of my new, much quieter place.
Yes.
I didn't leave you, Chelsea, I said, my voice steady. I just followed your advice. I stopped being part of the life you didn't want me in. I hung up, blocked her number.
First time in 5 years.
I slept through the night. The justice of it wasn't her anger. It was in the absolute, beautiful, and permanent peace I found the moment I stopped caring about her games. It wasn't a loss.
Weird.
It was an eviction of all the things that were keeping me from being happy. And frankly, the silence was the best thing it ever heard. This is a complete YouTube storytelling script, structured for high engagement, emotional resonance, and dramatic impact. I stood in the doorway, the scent of dust and stale air clinging to my work clothes. She didn't even glance up, her focus entirely on folding a shirt into a neat, compact square.
Pleased.
I want to be fully prepared, she murmured, not breaking her rhythm. The weather forecast looks perfect, and Liam mentioned the lake is breathtaking this time of year. A cold pit formed in my stomach.
Thinking.
Maybe I should come along, I said, my voice steady despite the sinking feeling. That's when she looked up, her eyes wide with genuine shock.
What? No.
This is my friend group, Dean,
Even know most of these people. You're my fiancé.
I countered, the weight of the word hanging heavily in the space between us. Her jaw tightened, a familiar sign of her growing irritation. You're not invited. It's truly just a group of friends. Why was my presence such a threat? She stood up, crossing her arms tightly over her chest, creating an invisible wall. This is exactly why we have issues, Dean. The constant jealousy.
Fashion.
Just trying to go camping with my friends, and you're acting like I'm committing a crime. You're blowing off our venue walkthrough, just to spend 3 days in the woods with Liam, I reminded her. She scoffed. A sharp,
Missive sound that cut deeper than I expected.
we're friends, Dean. Not every man is looking to sleep with me. Despite what your insecurities tell you, that's your problem, not mine. My problem, I said, my voice dropping, is watching you prioritize him over us. She took a step toward me, her eyes hard, cold, and completely detached. Maybe I'd want to spend more time with you if you weren't so incredibly boring.
You come home exhausted. You rot on the couch, and you never want to experience anything.
Liam actually knows how to have a life. There it was. The truth laid bare. Liam was the excitement, and I was just the reliable.
You dull anchor.
If you despise me that much, I asked, then why in the world are you still marrying me? She stepped into my space, her voice a low, venomous whisper. Maybe. You're right, if you can't handle how I live my life.
You can just leave.
I am finished apologizing for wanting my own freedom. The apartment went completely silent. 5 years of my life, distilled into a single agonizing moment.
Fig.
There was an engagement ring on her finger that I had skipped hundreds of meals to afford. The wedding venue was booked solid. $14,000 in non-refundable deposits, all gone.
Mean.
The invitations were already designed, sitting in a pile at her friend's print shop. My name was on the lease, and my life was tangled in hers. She was telling me to walk out, simply, because I didn't like the idea of her retreating into the wilderness with another man. Something inside me didn't just break, it completely snapped. All those months of agonizing,
Questioning my own sanity. Of wondering if I was too controlling or just too sensitive, it all vanished.
I looked at her, searching for a shred of hesitation, but found none. I nodded slowly. Okay. She blinked.
Momentarily stunned.
Okay, what? You can go, I said, my voice devoid of emotion. Enjoy your trip. Her expression shifted instantly. She was caught off guard, expecting a fight, some pathetic begging, or perhaps tears.
Feud.
Whatever. I walked past her toward the closet, my movements mechanical and calm. I pulled out my duffel bag and began to pack. What are you doing? She demanded, her voice rising. Packing.
Fane.
I started pulling my clothes off their hangers, my focus purely on the task. Dean, don't be so dramatic. I'm just going camping. I'll be back on Monday. I didn't offer a response. I didn't even look her way. Dean, stop it.
You're being completely ridiculous.
I grabbed my phone and texted Hunter, my oldest friend. Need a place to crash. Are you around? The response might see screen in less than 30 seconds. Doors unlocked.
Rooms is yours.
Chelsea was watching me now, her confusion rapidly spiraling into panic. Are you seriously walking out over a camping trip? I stopped and looked at her.
You told me to leave.
If I didn't like how you lived your life. So I'm taking your advice. Have fun in the woods with Liam. She lunged forward, grabbing my arm, her touch burning like ice. I didn't mean it like that.
We don't do this.
Don't turn this into something it isn't. I pulled my arm free, my movements final. She followed me into the living room as I gathered my keys and my laptop bag. You are overreacting.
Fix.
I stopped at the front door and looked back at her one last time. Have a great time. Then I was gone. I drove to Hunter's place, my mind strangely clear for the first time in years. He was waiting with a drink and,
Mercifully, 0 questions.
the guest room was ready, and the silence was as a relief. That night, my phone buzzed. A text from Chelsea. You know what? I will have fun. I refuse to let you ruin my mood.
Fumel. Such a dramatic, pathetic jerk.
I didn't reply. I just muted the conversation. I had things to handle. I waited until she left on Friday morning, her car pulling out of the driveway.
Bro,
I checked her location sharing. She had forgotten to turn it off. I watched the little blue dot move steadily north toward Mirror Lake. Once I knew she was gone, I texted Hunter again. Need the truck, I'm moving out today.
with 2 coffees and no questions asked.
Real friendship. I walked through the apartment with a clipboard. Everything I had bought, I reclaimed. Taking it all, I told him. We started with the furniture.
A couch.
I'd paid $1,600 for that 2 years ago. Hunter helped me haul it down 3 flights of stairs. The kitchen table? Mine, from before we even lived together.
Phew, the massive TV and the entertainment console.
Both mine. The desk, the office chair, the bookshelf, the dresser of everything was bought with my salary. We worked for 4 hours straight. I created a spreadsheet as we moved.
Tallying the cost.
Over $5,100 in furniture alone. Except it wasn't a shared life, if I was the only one footing the bill. We made 2 trips to the storage unit ID, rented that morning.
Fend in.
A 10-by-10 climate-controlled space, paid 6 months in advance. By the time we returned for the 3rd trip, the apartment looked like a crime scene. Chelsea's items remained. Her art prints, her decorative throw pillows,
Fusettes.
her trinkets. But the foundation of the home was gone. I packed my remaining personal items, my clothes, my tools, my books. I left her the basic dishes and the cheap silverware. Then,
Found the engagement ring in her jewelry box.
Princess cut, white gold band. It had cost me $3,200. I pocketed it. I de-sell it, recoup the loss, and put the money toward a new life. Saturday morning,
Fube.
Ron, a man who didn't tolerate nonsense. Ron, my fiancé and I have split. I'm moving out, and I need my name off the lease. He sighed on the other end. I'm sorry to hear that, son.
You're both locked in through March.
Early termination means a penalty, but ill. See what I can do. I'll pay the penalty, I said, but my name needs to be off that document by Monday.
Feel.
Come by with the paperwork at 10 tomorrow. Will she be able to cover the rent on her own? He asked cautiously. I don't know, I replied honestly. But that's not my problem anymore. Fair enough.
The next call was the hardest one.
Chelsea's father, Walter, a decent, honest man who had always treated me like his own son. Hey, Dean. What's going on? Walter, I need to let you know that Chelsea and I are finished.
Wedding is off.
There was a long, heavy silence. What happened? I told him the truth. About the camping trip, about Liam, about the disrespect. Another long silence. Liam? He finally asked, his voice tight.
You guys she works with.
Yeah. He let out a long, weary breath. I've been wondering about that. I've seen the way he comments on her posts. He paused, then asked, Are you sure about this, son? Completely sure.
Means the wedding is officially canceled.
I understand, he said. And I'm sorry you had to go through this. When I hung up, I felt a weight lift. On Monday, the paperwork was signed. I was free.
3 days later.
I received a notification. Chelsea's location sharing had stopped. I figured she realized the joke was on her when she came home to an empty living room and a pile of debts she couldn't cover.
Eat.
I heard through a mutual friend that she had tried to call me a dozen times, panicked because she couldn't afford the rent and had no furniture to host her little parties. She asked me to bring it all back. She said she was sorry.
Thinks she.
She said it was all just a big misunderstanding. I didn't answer. I took the money from the ring, bought a plane ticket, and left for the coast. I didn't look back. Sometimes,
Lose everything. You thought.
you wanted to realize what you actually deserved, and for the first time in 5 years, the air felt perfectly clear. The air in the cafe felt thin, like I was breathing in a vacuum.
Thing.
I stood there with my latte, staring at the woman who had been the architect of my misery. Amber looked frantic, her makeup smeared, darting her eyes around the shop as if she were being hunted. Dean, please, she hissed.
Closing the distance between us.
We need to talk about the apartment situation. I didn't even blink. I just took a slow, deliberate sip of my coffee. There is no situation, Amber, I said, my voice as steady as a tombstone.
Feed.
There is simply an empty space where my belongings used to be, and a lease that is now entirely Chelsea's problem. She looked at me, bewildered,
Dean.
as if she couldn't process the fact that I wasn't playing the part of the heartbroken fiancé anymore. She's crying, Dean. She hasn't slept in 3 days. You've completely wrecked her life over a minor, stupid misunderstanding.
Misunderstanding.
I laughed, a dry, humorless sound that made her flinch. Is that what we're calling a weekend spent at Mirror Lake with Liam now? She went silent, the color draining from her face. I know everything, Amber,
Closer.
lowering my voice so only she could hear. I know about the texts. I know about the business trips. I know that you, her best friend,
Fainted.
were the one who helped her pack for a romantic getaway while I was slaving away at the office to pay for a wedding that was never going to happen. She sputtered, trying to find an excuse, but there was nothing left to say.
Truth had stripped her naked.
I'm done, I said, turning my back on her. Do not ever contact me again. As I walked out into the crisp morning air,
Felt a weight lifting off my shoulders that I hadn't realized. I was carrying.
the walk to my office felt different. The nitty noise, the chatter, the frantic pace of everyone else none of it mattered anymore. I reached my desk,
Isim.
checked my emails, and saw a notification from the rental agency. Chelsea had tried to call them, likely to complain about the missing furniture. The agent had simply told her that the lease was signed, the deposit was processed,
You.
and the inventory audit confirmed everything taken was legally mine. I leaned back in my chair, closing my eyes. The silence of my new place, even with just a mattress and a laptop.
Was the most peaceful thing I had ever experienced.
My phone buzzed again, but I didn't even look at the caller ID. I picked it up, went to the settings, and turned it off completely. The game was over.
Furniture was sold. Box.
The ring was sitting in a velvet box, waiting to be turned into a down payment on a house that was finally going to be just mine. A few days later,
Fusen.
while I was out grabbing groceries, when I saw a car pull up to the curb. It was Chelsea. She looked tired, her energy completely drained, the vibrant,
Rot.
energetic girls I once knew replaced by someone who looked like she'd been dragged through a hurricane. She stepped out of the car, hesitation written all over her posture. Dean, she whispered, the name sounding fragile.
Walking.
I kept my eyes forward, moving toward my car with purpose. Dean, wait, I saw the photos you posted online. You look happy. I stopped then. I turned around slowly, looking at her.
Really looking at her. I am happy, Chelsea.
I said. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't lying I'm happy, because I finally realized that I wasn't just losing a partner.
He was being released from a prison I had built for myself.
Her eyes welled up with tears, but there was no sympathy left in me to give. What about the wedding? She asked, a last-ditch effort to keep the fantasy alive.
Vincent.
The wedding was a performance, I replied coldly, and the curtain fell on Sunday. I got into my car and started the engine. As I drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror one last time. She was standing on the sidewalk,
Feed.
looking small and defeated. I didn't feel rage. I didn't feel sadness. I felt absolute, cold, liberating freedom. The road ahead was open. The silence was mine to keep. And for the first time in 5 years,
Future was entirely, perfectly blank.
I drove home, turned on some music, and began the rest of my life. I was sitting on the couch, the controller gripped tight in my hands, trying to lose myself in the game,
Turn to pick the match, I murmured.
not looking up. We played until the clock hit 2 in the morning. Tuesday morning felt cold. I was grabbing a quick coffee near my office when Amber suddenly appeared out of nowhere. She literally stepped right in front of me as I was heading to my truck, arms crossed, staring me down. I tried to walk around her, but she sidestepped, blocking my path again. "Don't you dare ignore me, Dean," she hissed.
Fate.
"Chelsea is a total mess because of you." I unlocked my truck door, but before I could climb in, she grabbed the edge of the door, forcing it open. "You gutted her apartment," she accused, her voice rising.
You canceled the wedding.
"You disappeared like some kind of spineless coward. What kind of man does that?" I looked down at her hand, pale and trembling against my doorframe. "The kind who is done being disrespected."
Replied flatly. Move your hand.
"Not until you listen to me." I gave the door a firm, steady pull. She had to let go, or risk losing her fingers. I started the engine,
Vic.
and she slammed her palm against my window in a fit of rage. "You're absolutely pathetic," she shrieked. She dodged a bullet. "Liam is twice the man you'll ever be." I rolled the window down just 2 inches.
Finction.
"Then she should be perfectly happy with him," I said and drove off. I checked my rearview mirror and saw her standing in the middle of the parking lot, screaming something I couldn't hear. I didn't care. That afternoon,
Text popped up from an unknown number.
Bernie's Diner, 6 p.m., be there. Grace. No, please, no request, just a cold command from my ex-fiancée's mother. Assuming I'd just obey because she said so, I ignored it. At 6:15,
Phone rang.
same unknown number. "Dean, this is Grace." Her voice was sharp. "I'm sitting here at Bernie's waiting for you. Where are you? At home. I told you to meet me at 6. "You demanded," I corrected.
He declined.
Her voice went from cold to ice. "I am Chelsea's mother. After 5 years together, you owe me the respect of a conversation." "I don't owe anyone anything," I replied. "We are done, Grace."
Thing, don't you dare hang up on me.
She snapped. "My daughter is devastated. You took everything from that apartment. You will return it. You will apologize. And you will fix this disaster you created."
Single thing.
I said, my voice steady. "It was all mine. Half of it should be hers. You live together. You don't just get to steal everything because you're throwing a tantrum. Call the police then."
We're challenged.
"I have the receipts for every single item." "This is financial abuse, Dean. I could have you arrested for this." I almost laughed out loud. "Good luck with that." I hung up and blocked the number.
You.
10 minutes later, someone began pounding on Hunter's front door. It was an aggressive, frantic knocking that wouldn't let up. Hunt looked at me, eyebrow raised. "Want me to get it?" "It's probably her. I'll handle it."
Things, I said.
I opened the door to find Grace standing on the porch. I had no idea how she'd gotten here so fast. Her face was splotchy red. Her finger pointed accusingly at my chest. "How dare you hang up on me?
Eve.
How dare you be so disrespectful? I drove all the way here because you refused to meet me like an adult." "I never invited you," I said coldly. "I don't need an invitation to defend my daughter," she spat. "You destroyed her life.
Thengreet.
She's living in our house now because of you. She's living in your house because she chose a camping trip with another man over her own wedding," I countered. Grace stepped closer, invading my space. "Liam is just a friend."
Through your thick skull.
"She's allowed to have friends. You were always so controlling, so jealous, you drove her away. If that's the script she's selling, you're welcome to buy it," I said.
It's the truth. Fixta.
She told me everything. How you'd guilt trip her for going out. How you'd monitor her phone. How you'd. A truck pulled into the driveway. It was Walter's F-150. The same one I'd helped him load with drywall half a dozen times.
He got out.
Saw his wife midrant on a stranger's porch, and his expression went completely flat. "Grace, what are you doing here?" She spun around, hair disheveled. "I'm talking to Dean about what he did to our daughter."
Thanks him.
Walter walked up the steps, nodding at me briefly. Before looking at his wife, Grace jumped back in. "He stole all her furniture, Walter. He canceled the wedding without even telling her. She came home to an empty apartment. Do you understand me?" She told him to leave. Walter cut her off, his voice low and firm. "He left Grace's. That's how it works. Grace's mouth opened and closed, stunned.
Fix.
Whose side are you even on? The side that makes sense, he said. He took his things. Walter turned to me. Dean, did you take anything that wasn't yours? No, sir. Then, there's no theft. He turned back to his wife.
Fangvin. Grace, get in the truck.
I am not done. Yeah, you are, Walter said, his voice hardening. You drove to this man's friend's house to scream at him for taking his own property.
All after our daughter
Chose a camping trip with Liam over her own wedding planning. Grace's face turned a deep, humiliated purple. She made one mistake and he threw away 5 years. Walter let out a sharp, joyless laugh.
beefsteak.
I've seen Liam's comments on her social media posts for months. Dean isn't blind, and neither am I. So you're just going to let her suffer. I'm going to let her face the consequences of her own choices, Walter said.
Fusion.
Now, get in the truck before you embarrass yourself further. Grace looked between us, her expression twisted with rage and humiliation. This is absolutely unbelievable. The truck, now.
Finger. She jabbed a finger at me one last time. This isn't over.
Actually, it is, Walter said firmly. Then he looked at me, his demeanor softening. Sorry about this, Dean. It's fine, sir. No, it's not.
Fig. Grace shouldn't have come here.
He reached into his pocket, pulled out his wallet, and handed me a business card. That's my direct line. If Chelsea or Grace gives you any more trouble, you call me. I'll handle it.
Faisman. I took the card.
I appreciate it. He nodded, turned, and guided his wife forcefully toward the truck. She was still complaining, but he opened the passenger door and practically pushed her inside.
Hunter appeared beside me as they drove off.
Yup.
Did your ex's dad just shut down his own wife to protect you? Yep, I said, letting out a long breath. That was the most surreal thing I've ever witnessed. Wednesday afternoon,
He showed up.
at Hunter's house. This time, Hunter caught her before I even knew she was there. I was in the guest room working remotely when I heard raised voices outside.
Fanged.
I looked out the window and saw Chelsea on the porch, yelling through the screen door. I know he's in there. Dean, get out here right now. Hunter was blocking the doorway, phone in hand, looking completely bored.
Trespassing.
Hunter said, I already told you on Monday to leave. Not until he faces me. This is ridiculous. He can't keep hiding. He just doesn't want to see you, Chelsea, Hunter replied. Dean, she screamed,
Fent.
her voice cracking. You're a coward. Real men face their problems. Hunter didn't budge. Final warning, leave now, or the police will be here in 5 minutes to escort you off the property.
She finally realized the game was over.
She turned around, defeated, and walked back to her car. I finally felt the weight lifting. The chaos of the past 5 years was being dismantled, piece by piece,
First,
and for the first time in a long time, the silence that followed felt like freedom. The air in the kitchen was thick with a silence that felt like a physical weight. Dean stood there, his jaw locked,
Reddit.
his eyes cold as ice as he stared at the woman who had once been his entire world. Look at me, Chelsea, he said, his voice terrifyingly calm. This is absolutely ridiculous, and you know it.
Keep hiding behind locked doors like a coward. Thought.
Chelsea was vibrating with rage, her knuckles white as she gripped the counter. Real men face their problems, Dean. Stop acting like a child and talk to me. Hunter,
Standing by the doorway. Didn't even blink.
he checked his watch with a bored expression, then looked back at her. Final warning, Chelsea. Leave now, or I am calling the cops. I'm not playing this game anymore. She laughed.
A sharp, hysterical sound.
You wouldn't dare. You're a joke.
Dot.
Hunter didn't argue. He simply pulled out his phone and tapped the screen to start the call. Seeing the flicker of the screen,
Fincy.
Chelsea made the biggest mistake of her life. She lunged forward, trying to force her way past him into the house. Hunter, who had played linebacker in college, didn't even flinch. He blocked her path with one lolid arm.
Posture immovable.
You just assaulted me, he said, his voice rising just enough to be heard over the rising panic in her eyes. But I'm calling the police. You're trespassing and you just got physical.
Phasian.
Sirens wailed in the distance, cutting through the tense atmosphere. Chelsea's face drained of color, the mask of rage replaced by pure, unadulterated terror. You're actually doing this, She didn't wait for an answer.
Yeesh.
She scrambled backward, sprinting for her car and peeling out of the driveway, just as the flashing lights turned the corner of the street. Hunter hung up the phone before it even connected to the station. He walked back inside, a small, satisfied smirk playing on his lips. Your ex tried to break in and assault you. I caught it all on the doorbell camera, he said, tossing his phone onto the table.
It's going to be perfect for the restraining order we've been drafting.
Watching her scramble like a frightened animal when those sirens hit was the absolute highlight of my entire month.
Use.
Chelsea's reality began to crumble in slow motion, and I had a front row seat to every agonizing, embarrassing second of it through mutual friends who couldn't help but keep me in the loop. The first week after we parted ways, she went all in on Liam, changing her relationship status, plastering her feed with photos of them at concerts and Latin night events. She used captions like, "Finally found the real thing," and "Real recognizes real."
Meant.
Her comment section was a swarm of validation hearts, fire emojis, and hollow praises. But Liam only played along for exactly 4 days. Then, he posted a photo with a different girl, and then another one the very next day.
By day 7,
Chelsea was in the comments, asking who is that? On his posts, like a woman losing her mind, he didn't even give her the courtesy of a reply. When she eventually showed up at a venue where he was working a promotion,
filled her in front
of a massive crowd, that he wasn't looking for anything serious and that he never had been. He said, "I thought you knew that, Chelsea." She didn't take the rejection well,
Figs.
causing such a massive scene that the security team had to drag her out of the building. Week 2, the reality of her finances hit. She was short on rent by hundreds of dollars,
Moment.
and her part-time job was barely keeping her afloat. Her photography business had completely dried up, mostly because her client list was made up of my connections colleagues, needing headshots or friends who were tired of her flakes. He called her parents, weeping, begging for a bailout. They gave her one final check, $1,600 under strict conditions. Get a full-time job, stop the partying, and start acting like an adult. She took the money,
Every single condition, and was back to square one by the weekend.
Week 3 brought the Amber nuclear option. Liam didn't just move on, he moved directly to Chelsea's best friend.
He posted a photo of them in bed together,
And the meltdown was spectacular. Chelsea went scorched earth in the comments, calling Amber a snake and a fake friend,
painting.
but Amber just clapped back with a screenshot, showing Chelsea had never been exclusive with Liam in the first place. Then the skeletons started falling out of the closet.
Fish.
Someone exposed that Chelsea had borrowed money from a friend months ago and never paid it back. Another person mentioned she had bailed on being a bridesmaid because she was too hungover to stand. By week 4,
Beefon.
the girl who thought she was a princess was back in her childhood bedroom, sleeping under the same posters from high school, working a dead-end retail job. The desperate messages started at week 5. She sent texts from burner numbers. "I made a mistake. You were right about everything. I ignored them. I'm losing my mind, I need you," she pleaded. I ignored those too. She even tried to show up at my old office.
But the receptionist told her I had transferred months ago.
When she posted a long, rambling Facebook rant at 2 a.m. calling me abusive and manipulative, I didn't get angry. I just took a screenshot and sent it to my lawyer.
Post backfired.
Immediately, people who actually shoo Memi coworkers, my friends, started flooding the comments with the truth. She deleted the post within 3 hours, but it was far too late. Meanwhile, my own life was upgrading in ways I hadn't even thought possible. By week 3, I had signed a lease on a gorgeous one-bedroom apartment in a better part of town. It was mine. I bought a sectional sofa with deep,
soft cushionings, the kind
where you can actually stretch out and breathe. I mounted a massive 65-inch TV on the wall and rebuilt my gaming setup from the ground up. I treated myself to a custom PC,
fixing.
a liquid-cooled beast with an RTX 4080 and lights that made my room feel like a cockpit. I bought the mechanical keyboard with the clicky switches she used to nag me about, and I enjoyed every single satisfying click.
I spent
about $4,500 on my space, and I didn't feel a shred of guilt because, for the first time in years, the money with Shipuri was actually mine. Dot. A local rec basketball league on Wednesday nights.
Really viewed out to be the perfect way to burn off stress.
At first, I was gasping for air after 10 minutes, a grim reminder of how much I'd let myself go while walking on eggshells in that relationship. But by week 4,
I was keeping pace.
by week 8, I was the one leading the offense. I started hitting the gym 4 days a week, not for revenge, but for my own sanity. I put on 15 pounds of solid muscle.
I felt stronger than I had in a decade.
My work buddies started inviting me to Thursday Happy. Hours the ones I'd spent years skipping because Chelsea always had some emergency or event she needed me to attend.
Thing was clear.
Everything was quiet. Everything was mine. I realized then that the best way to handle someone like Chelsea wasn't to fight her. It was to succeed so completely, so loudly,
And so joyfully.
that she realized she never actually mattered to my future. The justice wasn't in her misery. The justice was in my peace. It took me 3 months to realize I had a life again. I was hitting the gym,
Finally.
feeling like myself after years of being drained. Work buddies started inviting me to Thursday happy hours, the same ones Iddy skipped for years because Chelsea always had a crisis or a demand.
Felt good to be a human being instead of a project.
Then, at a work mixer, I met Nicole. She was a graphic designer with real ambition. We didn't talk about drama. We talked about projects, about hiking, about life.
For the first time in forever,
Respect felt like the baseline, not some luxury I had to earn. Around week 10, the peaks was shattered. Nicole started getting messages at 11 p.m. He's abusive. Chelsea wrote, he's a monster.
Get out while you can.
Then 30 minutes later, he's using you to replace me. You'll see his true colors. It was pathetic. Chelsea wasn't just losing a boyfriend, she was losing control of her favorite toy.
Nickel
Didn't respond, she just screenshotted every single word and sent them to me. My lawyer took one look at the thread and told me, document everything. She's spiraling. I created a folder on my phone. Every rant,
threat.
every unhinged Facebook post. It was my insurance policy. Nicole blocked her, ignored her, and honestly, she never even brought it up again. That was the moment I knew I had officially upgraded.
Fuel.
I thought the Chelsea show was canceled, but the finale was waiting for me at Greg's housewarming party. I almost didn't go, but Greg was a real friend, and I was tired of hiding. Nicole was on my arm, looking radiant. Heads up,
Quickly,
Greg whispered at the door. Chelsea is here. She showed up uninvited, and she looks unstable. We mingled, pretending we didn't notice the cold, predatory gaze tracking us from the corner. Around 9, the room turned silent. Chelsea walked over, swaying slightly, her eyes bloodshot. Dean, we need to talk, she spat out. There's nothing to say, Chelsea. Leave, I replied, my voice steady. She laughed, a sharp, broken sound. You replaced me with her?
Downgraded, Dean. You're pathetic.
Nicole didn't blink. She just looked at Chelsea, then looked at the mess of an outfit Chelsea was wearing. Wow, Nicole said, smooth as silk, rich coming from you.
Really checked a mirror lately.
Chelsea's face went purple.
Shut up, you.
She turned back to me, screaming now. I gave you 5 years. You're boring. You're nothing without me. This is embarrassing, Nicole said firmly.
You should leave.
Chelsea snapped. She lunged, reaching for Nicole's hair, but Nicole was quick. She stepped aside with grace. Chelsea's momentum, fueled by her own rage and the weight shed put on, betrayed her. She didn't hit Nicole, she hit the dessert table. A 3-tier chocolate cake met her face mid-lunge. It was a disaster. Frosting everywhere, cake crumbles sticking to her hair.
Final blow was the sound of fabric failing.
As she tried to steady herself, her jeans split right down the back seam. The room stayed dead silent for 3 seconds. Then, someone stifled a laugh. Then another.
He stood there.
Covered in chocolate, exposed to the room, realizing that the power she thought she had was gone. She looked at me, then at the phone in Greg's hand, recording the entire pathetic display. Her anger didn't just fade, it turned into absolute crushing humiliation. Stop laughing! She shrieked, her voice cracking like glass. Time to go, I said, barely raising my voice. She didn't fight it. He turned and ran out the front door, leaving the drama and the cake behind. That night, I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel like a victim. I felt like a man who finally reclaimed his narrative.
Feed Zader.
Nicole held my hand on the drive home, and we didn't even mention Chelsea's name. Some people spend their lives trying to tear you down, but they don't realize that in the end, they only succeed in tearing themselves apart.
Folder on my phone fee. Proof of her insanity.
But I never needed to show it to anyone again. Sometimes, silence is the loudest victory of all. The air in the garden was thick with the scent of lilies and the sharp,
Suffocating tang of humiliation.
Chelsea stood frozen in the center of the patio, her designer dress ruined, a thick, white layer of frosting caked across her cheek and staining her collar. She glanced around,
But for an ally.
but all she found were cameras, dozens of phones held by people she once considered her inner circle, all capturing her lowest point. The anger that had fueled her entrance moments ago was rapidly evaporating, placed by a cold, hollow shame that made her hands tremble. "Stop laughing!" she shrieked, her voice cracking into a jagged, pathetic sob. Greg didn't even flinch,
Bing.
his thumb dancing across his phone screen as he calmly recorded the spectacle. "Time to go, Chelsea," he said, his voice flat and devoid of any lingering affection. Now, I stood just a few feet away,
Fiend.
my arm firmly around Nicole's waist, watching the woman, who had spent years trying to dismantle my life, finally face the wrecking ball of her own making. Chelsea's eyes darted toward me,
Vince.
searching for a spark of the old guilt she used to manipulate me with. But I gave her nothing but a steady, indifferent gaze. Her mascara was running in long, dark rivers down her face, and her jeans ripped during her frantic, clumsy attempt to storm the stage where, held together by nothing more than pride and frayed threads. You're all just miserable, cruel jerks," she spat out, backing toward the side gate with a clumsy, limping gait.
Grundy.
She tried to shield the tear in her pants with one hand, while frantically clawing at the sticky icing on her face with the other. She spun around, stumbling over her own heels, and fled through the gate like a wounded animal. A few seconds later, the sharp, aggressive roar of her engine broke the silence, followed by the screech of tires as she peeled away from the curb. Stop! For a heartbeat, the backyard was deathly still, the air vibrating with the echo of her departure. Then, the laughter returned, louder and sharper than before. "Well, that was certainly a new level of pathetic," someone whispered from the corner of the patio,
You.
though the comment carried clearly across the lawn. Greg looked down at his ruined suit, then at the remnants of the cake smeared across his pristine tablecloth, and let out a long, weary sigh.
Suppose.
"That's one way to crash a wedding," he remarked, shrugging off the chaos with the practiced ease of a man who had finally stopped caring. I walked over, offering him a hand to help clear the debris, feeling a strange, quiet peace settle over my chest. People continued to huddle in groups, whispering, dissecting every frame of the disaster, their eyes still wide with the shock of what they had just witnessed. Nicole squeezed my arm,
Fix.
her presence a constant grounding force that reminded me exactly where I belonged. We stayed until the stroke of midnight, the night air turning crisp,
Few.
until the last of the guests had filtered out and the lights of the venue began to dim. Driving back to my house, the city lights blurred past the windows, reflecting a Priyahali that was finally, blissfully, mine. We got home,
You job.
the house warm and inviting, and moved into the kitchen to start the coffee machine. I sank into the cushions of my couch, looking around at the home I had built,
You worn.
the life I had painstakingly reclaimed from the wreckage she had left behind. Suddenly, my phone buzzed against the coffee tabla, sharp, insistent vibration that cut through the quiet. It was the group chat from the wedding,
Frolit.
a cascade of notifications and video clips being uploaded by everyone who had been standing there with their phones ready. I tapped the screen, and Nicole leaned in close,
Fuse.
our heads brushing together as we watched the replay of Chelsea's spectacular collapse. She had arrived with every intention of burning my world down, convinced that she could reclaim the spotlight and reassert her dominance.
Beatful.
Instead, she had only succeeded in cementing her own disgrace, proving to every single person we knew exactly who she was. I locked the phone, tossed it aside, and took Nicole's hand in mine.
You.
I wasn't the same man who had been manipulated by Chelsea's games, and I certainly wasn't the man who would ever let her hurt me again. We are so incredibly close to hitting that 100,000 subscriber milestone on this channel,
Thanked.
and I'm so grateful for every one of you who has joined this journey. If you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, please consider doing it. Now, it helps us reach that goal and keeps these stories coming to you every single week.
Picked.
Thank you for being here, for listening, and for helping me turn the page on this chapter of my life.